Hello friends. As you may be able to tell by my hair, it's been raining all morning here, which means it is the perfect time to get some seeds in the ground. I started to show you guys a little bit about planting successions in my previous video, so in this one I want to show you the actual process of getting things in the ground. Alright, so let me get you guys started with what you're going to need. Obviously, you're going to need fresh planting space. I've got my soil ready to go right here. You're going to need your seeds. These guys are, this is just an example. My tag's falling everywhere. So this is another thing I'm very intentional about whenever I'm planting seeds, especially. If I'm transplanting an actual plant, I can usually identify it. But if it's a seed, I want to make sure that that is very legible. So I've got a tag for every one of my seeds that's going to go in the ground. And this one, our butterfly pea, I did allow it to soak. So it has been, the tag is inside there. That's a good, this is one of my favorite tricks if I'm starting a lot of larger seeds, is just to leave the tag down inside of the container. Because if you're using plastic tags, it'll hold up just fine in the water. All right, so we need soil, we need seeds. This puppy is one of my absolute favorite new purchases this year. So the head on this has these tiny, tiny little openings. So it's a very gentle kind of watering. It's very, very gentle. You don't want to use your typical shower head here because seeds can be washed away very easily. And then another thing is just whatever kind of digging tool you like. I'm going to use this to kind of level out my soil and also to get like a little trench in place. Each of these is going to have a little bit of a different, I use a little bit of a different style for each. So let's just go ahead and get going. All right, we're going to start. This is the bed where we had the squash growing, and we are going to do two different kinds of basil here. Don't mix up your tags with basil. Basil can be especially confusing. So I'm just going to kind of loosen things up. Now, as I said, it has been raining, so our soil is in really good condition for getting stuff in the ground. If it hasn't rained before you get started, you can just water the area. You just want it a couple of inches deep in terms of how far the moisture has gone down in. I've got two different kinds of basil I'm doing here. I'm doing a sweet basil and a holy basil. I purchased some holy basil earlier in the year, and it's a different variety, I believe, from what everybody else is growing because the flower color is different. Flower color for what I'm working with is like green, and I think the holy basil that I see a lot of people using has a really pretty blue flower, which reminds me more of blue spice basil. But yeah, no, whatever. All right, so I'm kind of making my trenches at this point, and I'm seeing it may have rained all day, but there's only a couple of inches that are actually nice and moist here. And the kind of soil that I have in these beds is a compost and topsoil blend. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this with a little bit of water gently before we get started, just so that I know it's moist. I don't have to worry about it. Okay. Now this part, I'm going to go ahead and put my little tags where we're going to go here. So holy basil is going to go on this left side closer to the center of the bed, and then my sweet basil is going to go on my right towards closer to the edge. And basil seeds are quite small. It may be kind of difficult for you to see. So they're not as small as carrot seeds. Of course, we don't need tons and tons and tons of these. Unless you just wanted to overseed, and you know, if you wanted to use basil as like a salad green or something, you could certainly do that. And just put a ton of them in here. So I just kind of sprinkle them along. There we go. All right, so that would be our sweet basil. I'm going to very, very lightly kind of knock some of this soil from the edge over top of where we just put it. We put our seeds and water that in. You want to make sure that you water your seeds in because it's going to give this signal to the seed that it's time to grow. And it's as long as there's moisture hitting it from all sides, it's also going to wash the soil in around the seed so that in the future it will be healthier and it will have full contact with the soil, which is exactly what you want. Alrighty, let's move on to our holy basil. We're going to do the exact same thing with that. I have a few fewer seeds in this packet, so I don't want to use quite as many, but that's the few that we're going with right there. Holy basil is one of the varieties of basil that does better if you allow it to flower. And so my plan is to allow this to go to seed and let it come back every year. So just once again, gently knocking some soil into our little ditch here, and then we are going to water it in as well. Because these seeds are so small, they don't necessarily need just a ton of water. It's a little easier for them to stay moist. All right, that's our basil. That's all it is. It's quite simple. Basil is a very quick growing plant. So I just mentioned to you that holy basil is one that you want to allow to go to flower. Sweet basil, the flavor profile of the leaves change if you allow it to flower. So ideally you will come out and pinch the tops of the flower, or of the, you know, I can actually just show you. I have one sitting right here. So this is a sweet basil. Let's see how well. Yeah. So that space right there is where the flower would come from. And anytime you're pruning a plant, you're actually sending it a signal telling it that it is time to flower, not to flower, sorry, time to grow more. So you can see where I have pinched these in the past. This little node right here, I've heard people call it an armpit. You want to go down to where you can see these two little branches at the base of the stem on either side of these larger leaves, and you pinch it right there. And you can use this in tea. Basil tea is very good. I feed this to the rabbits. The rabbits absolutely love it. Or you could just do a chop and drop and just toss it in your bed and allow it to feed the soil. But there's tons and tons of, or you could bring it in and dry it and use it as a dried herb or cook with it fresh. You know, it's the things you can do with basil, and really most herbs, honestly. It just, the list goes on and on. So this is a sweet basil. Let me show you an example of the holy basil that I purchased and planted. It's really very different than that seed packet looks in terms of the flower. This actually has like almost a light pink kind of flower. The bees still love it. So this is what we're looking at here. Let me just go grab that seed packet just so that I can show you exactly the difference in the color. You never want to leave these seed packets laying around if it's raining. Don't leave them out in your garden to ruin if there's seeds still in there. That being said, I have actually used them as markers. If I use the entire seed packet, I'll just toss the packet down and let it kind of, because they're paper, as long as they're paper, they're going to decompose. So here's this holy basil that's kind of a bluish color. And then this is just green. So, and I'm not super impressed with the flavor of this in terms of teas. This holy basil kind of, it smells like cat pee, not gonna lie. It kind of tastes like cat pee in a tea too, so I am not a huge fan. The rabbits love it. The rabbits still love it. I gave them some earlier yesterday and they all went crazy for it. Okay, so that's a little bit of basil stuff and also getting basil seeds in the ground. We will move on to our next project now. Okay, this is the area where we just removed our leeks. So I haven't touched the soil since I ripped them out. So this is kind of fluffy and goofy looking. So I am going to start by evening the space out. Move this piece of wood here. These big chunks of old leaves and stuff, I'm going to try to pull them out of the way. You don't need that. In this bed, I'm going to be planting our tomatoes, and I'm only going to do one of each variety here. So I'm going to give them a fair bit of space, and I'm going to look around and see if there's any kind of marker that I can use that's larger than these seed packets. Okay, so what you just saw me do, I am loosening up the soil in this hole. I am not burying the seed that deep. I am going to give it a little bit of a trench just so that water will collect in that area. So that's one tomato. And now 2 tomato space right here. Just going to do one of each variety. And with a tomato, they kind of form aerial roots as they grow. So if I wanted to later, as this came back up, I could come and put more soil around it and it would continue to grow roots into it. All right, our first tomato here is our Princip Borghese. This guy, we are gonna plop him right here. I think I'm gonna put the tag facing this. You know, I have a pumpkin growing right on that other side, and I don't know how well I'm gonna be able to see it, no matter where I put it, to be completely honest. I'm gonna go ahead, pop a little bit of water down first in both of our little holes. Now, some of these seeds don't look too hot. I'm just gonna plop three little seeds in there. And if you've ever eaten a tomato, you know the size of a tomato seed. They're pretty small. Plop them in, dust a little bit of soil over it, and hit it with more water. So one other reason I like to leave kind of an indentation is it's also going to give me the signal that's exactly where the seed is. Whereas sometimes when you place a tag, it's not always as clear. Alrighty, next is our black plum tomato. And this, I believe a friend of mine shared these seeds with me. There's only about 4 seeds in this little bag. They look pretty good though. Maybe we can collect these and save them for next time, but that is what they look like. I'm going to go ahead and put all 4 of these in here because, as I said, they are older seed. We're going to plop those down and hit them with the water. Okay, and that is our 2 tomatoes. You know, I love a good rainstorm, but the humidity in North Carolina after the storm, I'm drowning. I'm drowning in my own sweat. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to cram these in my pocket. All right, let's head on to our final stop in terms of our next round of seed placement. So the rain is starting up again, which means we better get to it. Our 2 seeds that we have that are being planted along this trellis are our butterfly pea, which I'm going to place on this side. And then we are also putting our sesame seed in here. All right, so we're going to start with our butterfly pea. This is what that's going to look like. And I'm going to plop. I've got 3 seeds that I started. So whenever I have it, there's only 3 in here, I'm literally just going to pour it like that. Swish it around a little bit. Grab my water. Go ahead and water these guys in. And then, sorry, I'm rushing through this last part. I don't really want to get soaked. All right, there's the tag for the Monticello sesame seed. And again, because this is a huge risk because of the amount of time it's meant that it takes according to the seed packet, I'm only going to do just a little handful of these sesame seeds in here. And I'm going to be a little more intentional about how far apart I place them. All right, got a little sprinkle there. And these I'm not going to even put soil over top of. I'm just watering them in. I say that. I am going to rake just a tiny, tiny bit of soil over top. Tiny, tiny bit. All right, now I'm going to water off of my hands. All right. So this I'm just going to leave out here. This stays in my garden because I don't often use it. So if anybody's ever watched any, oh my goodness, of Anne of all trades, she has this lazy gardening thing. She talks about things being in the way and on the way. So if I have these tools right here, I'm more likely to use them. And that is why I do that. And that is just fine. No, they will not last as long. They might rust. They will get rained on. The plastic on the handles might get a little janky, but you know, that's just fine with me because it's still there when I need it. And I'm one of those people that if I have to go across the yard to pick something up, I'm not going to use it. So anyway, little wisdom from other people who've come before who know more. And because it is raining, I'm going to go inside. And I hope that was helpful for you. I will say each seed is a bit different. Like if you want to talk about something that's a little trickier, carrot seeds are really hard. Carrot seeds are especially hard. So it is so humid out here, you guys. Humidity is about to kill me, which is fine. I'm grateful for the rain. I don't mean to be a whiner, but it is humid. So I'm thinking just a few other tips. If you're doing beans, if you're doing peas, if you're doing anything with a big seed, even something like a sunflower, that's something that I would soak ahead of time. This is true for squash. Anything that, is like this big, I would go ahead and soak overnight. I soaked those for 24 hours. These little cups are so convenient. I have tons and tons of these, and they last for forever if that's all you're doing with them. I don't eat out of them. I really only use them for garden stuff like this. I try to avoid plastic wherever I can. But I soak those seeds. Carrot seeds are weird because carrots require a lot of extra help. If they dry out, they die. So either they need to be, people will use like a board to cover them. I personally really like using the cornstarch method, where you kind of heat up a little bit of water and then you put cornstarch in it and you put it in a plastic bag and you squish it around so that it's, it creates like this gel, and then you put your carrot seeds in that and you let them set overnight in that. And if you squish it up and get it nice and fluffy before you start actually seeding your carrots in the garden, they're more evenly distributed in the liquid, and so you can almost use it like a piping bag and just put it right down the ditch you're planting your carrots in. It works great. It works really well for me. And it's just cornstarch. It's just a totally natural product. So that's probably the most difficult seed. Most flower seeds and stuff, I just kind of toss, like all of my zinnias and stuff that are growing out here. Those are just I just toss them and then they grow. Thank you, Lord, for seeds and the fact that seeds want to grow. Another pro tip, if your seed packet says it was packaged for 2023 and it's 2025 and you think that, you can't use it, it's good. Like, you may get a little bit less seeds that are actually viable, that are actually coming up, but you will still be able to grow plants from that seed packet. You know, there's videos out there of people growing 200-year-old tomato plants, like seeds that have been stored for that long. So it's worth a shot, you know. The thing is, if you put it in the trash, you're going to get zero germination. But if you toss it out in your garden, you might get at least something. So don't give up on growing things, because seeds do want to grow. It's another Jess-ism from Roots and Refuge. Seeds want to grow. And yeah, I appreciate that wisdom, because it's true. So that's my seed video. That's my succession sowing seeds. Just to recap, we found some spots in the garden that were empty. We made some spots in the garden that we emptied out because the leeks were done. They were past done, actually. They came out so easily. So in those empty spaces, we decided to count backwards from our first frost date to today to see when we were going to, like, how much time we would have. And then we looked at the seeds that we had available to us and their, days to maturity number. And we chose seeds that were a reasonable days to maturity within that 120 days that we have from now to our first frost date, which is the end of October here in Zone 8A in Central North Carolina. So that is what we did. Your numbers are going to be different, again, depending on where you're located, but that is as simple as it gets. And those seeds that are labeled to be able to grow less than the days that you have, I mean, you could easily do squash, you could easily do different kinds of beans, beans, like green beans, those rattlesnake pole beans over there, they took off in like 4 days, it felt like. They just decided to shoot up. So those are things that are heat loving. Something else that you could do is do another round of cucumbers, because at this point in the season, a lot of people are starting to lose their cucumbers because of the heat, but you could do like a fall round of cucumbers. You could do, like I did, was a fall round of tomatoes, and herbs are always a good one. So just look at what you got, see what's available to you. And, you know, you may also be able to go find something at your local nursery. That I know right now, Big Bloomers in Sanford, which is one of my favorite places to shop, they have, I want to say, 50% off on all of their annuals. And they're perfectly good plants. You know, they just need to go in the ground. So there's only a certain amount of time that those can be grown. And so we're cutting down. We're about halfway through the season here, a little less than halfway, but it's hot. And so people are kind of done gardening. So you can find excellent deals, especially if you shop local. I'm not talking about going like Lowe's Hardware. I'm talking about going to your little local nursery shop. And I would really encourage you to, if you can't shop local for food, if you can't shop local for other things, you will save money and get a better product in most cases if you shop local, if you're gardening, if you are looking for plants, like actual living plants. You may also find a better seed selection as well. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of shopping my values, and I want to support people. I don't want to support giant corporations. I want to support individual people that I can meet and have a relationship with, and I want to help them grow. So that is why I shop local. That plus Big Bloomers, if you're local to me and you've never been to Big Bloomers in Sanford and you like plants, let me just encourage you. You take the day, bring a water bottle, bring a snack. You're going to spend the entire day wandering in their greenhouses, because they just have that much. It is absolutely beyond worth going and checking out. So yeah, don't quit. You got this. Plants want to grow, seeds want to grow. Just all they need is some soil, some water, some air, some light. It's a good deal, you know? It's a really good deal. I'm very grateful for it. So, all right, you guys, I got to go to pick up our Azure Standard drop. If you don't know anything about Azure Standard, I'll drop a video about that too. Why not? It's a bulk organic grocery. They have non-organic options as well, but they focus on, giving you the option for organic produce. Oh, there's a hummingbird on my zinnia. I would try to turn the camera around, but I know there's no way. If I walk towards it, it's going to zoom away. I've also had goldfinches all over my sunflower seeds. Anyway, sorry. Focus. I will show you guys what an Azure Standard drop looks like, just because it's fun. It's a good time. So, and they're great people, and they're worth supporting too. They work directly with farmers to get produce that is grown well to you. So, all right, I'm out of here. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Sam over at Harvey Cow Homestead, and my hair is getting frizzier by the moment, so I think it might be a ball cap day. Anyway, I appreciate you. I hope you have a beautiful day. Thanks again for hanging out with me.